Hey everyone, welcome back to our chapter book read along of Holes by Louis Sachar. So, we are now on chapter 26 out of 50. And what I want you to do is, if you're watching this with someone, pause the video and talk about your favorite parts or some of the things you remember from our story that you think are important. And then, here goes my review. Holes is about a boy named Stanley Yelnats. Stanley is not very lucky, and he's always in the wrong place at the wrong time. One of these times was when he got hit in the head with some very expensive tennis shoes and then was blamed for stealing them. Stanley was given a choice. He could go to jail or go to Camp Green Lake. Well, he'd never been to camp before, so he picked Camp Green Lake. Now, Camp Green Lake isn't your usual camp. It's a camp for boys that are bad. They have done some things that are not good, and now are here at Camp Green Lake, which is not green, nor is there a lake. What the boys have to do are dig holes every day out on what used to be the lake, and they do it in the hot, hot heat in what looks like a desert. So, Stanley has met the boys in Tent D, and they are now digging their holes. A couple of the other people who are at the camp are Mr. Sir, Mr. Pendansky, and the warden. She's a little bit scary, and after they found something in one of the holes, it seems like she is looking for something more important than just the boys growing character by digging holes. So, a couple other things that we have learned about are Stanley's ancestors, and now the people who used to live at Camp Green Lake. Stanley's ancestors, they call him his no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather. He made a deal with a woman named Madame Zeroni, and he broke the deal. So now their family is cursed. Well, at least that's what they say. But they're just unlucky and, well, are always in the wrong place at the wrong time. Stanley's great-grandfather was robbed by someone named Kissin' Kate Barlow. She was an outlaw in Texas in the Wild West. Another thing we learn about is the residents of Green Lake before it was a camp and before the lake dried up. Catherine Barlow is the school teacher there in town, and she has a one-room schoolhouse, and she teaches all of the children and even some of the adults to read and learning about many different things. She really likes the onion picker, Sam. He is a very kind person who helped her fix lots of things. Now, this was 150 years ago, and he is black. And the townspeople did not like that Kate and Sam like each other. It's not good. Not right either. So, Kate and Sam, just at the end of our chapter, gave each other a smooch. So we're going to see what happens in the town of Green Lake after this occurs. All right, hope you enjoy our next chapters of Holes. Chapter 26. There were no telephones, but word spread quickly through the small town of Green Lake. By the end of the day, everyone in Green Lake had heard that the school teacher had kissed the onion picker. Not one child showed up for school the next morning. Miss Catherine sat alone in the classroom and wondered if she had lost track of the day of the week. Perhaps it was Saturday. It wouldn't have surprised her. Her brain and heart had been spinning ever since Sam kissed her. She heard a noise outside the door. Then suddenly a mob of men and women came storming into the school building. They were led by Trout Walker. "There she is!" Trout shouted. "The devil woman!" The mob was turning over desks and ripping down bulletin boards. "She's been poisoning your children's brains with books," Trout declared. They began piling all the books in the center of the room. "Think about what you're doing!" cried Miss Catherine. Someone made to grab for her, tearing her dress, but she managed to get out of the building. She ran to the sheriff's office. The sheriff had his feet up on the desk and was drinking from a bottle of whiskey. "Morning, Miss Catherine," he said. "They're destroying the schoolhouse," she said, gasping for breath. "They'll burn it to the ground if someone doesn't stop them." "Just calm your pretty self down a second," said the sheriff in a slow drawl, "and tell me what you're talking about." He got up from his desk and walked over to her. "Trout Walker has—" "Now don't go saying nothing bad about Charles Walker," said the sheriff. "We don't have much time," urged Catherine. "We've got to go stop them." "You're sure pretty," said the sheriff. Miss Catherine stared at him in horror. "Kiss me," said the sheriff. She slapped him across the face. He laughed. "You kiss the onion picker. Why won't you kiss me?" She tried to slap him again, but he caught her by the hand. She tried to wiggle free. "You're drunk," she yelled. "I always get drunk before a hanging." "A hanging? Who—" "It's against the law for a black man to kiss a white woman." "Well, then you'll have to hang me too," said Catherine, "because I kissed him back." "It ain't against the law for you to kiss him," the sheriff explained. "Just for him to kiss you." "We're all equal under the eyes of God," she declared. The sheriff laughed. "Then if Sam and I are equal, why won't you kiss me?" He laughed again. "I'll make you a deal. One sweet kiss. I won't hang your boyfriend. I'll just run him out of town." Miss Catherine jerked her hand free. As she hurried to the door, she heard the sheriff say, "The law will punish Sam, and God will punish you." She stepped back into the street and saw smoke rising from the schoolhouse. She ran down the lakefront, where Sam was hitching Mary Lou to the onion cart. "Thank God I found you," she sighed, hugging him. "We've got to get out of here, now!" "What?" "Someone must have seen us kissing yesterday," she said. "They set fire to the schoolhouse. The sheriff said he's going to hang you." Sam hesitated for a moment, as if he couldn't quite believe it. He didn't want to believe it. "Come on, Mary Lou," said Sam. "We have to leave Mary Lou behind," said Catherine. Sam stared at her for a moment. There were tears in his eyes. "Okay." Sam's boat was in the water, tied to a tree by a long rope. He untied it, and they waded through the water and climbed aboard. His powerful arms rowed them away from the shore, but his powerful arms were no match for Trout Walker's motorized boat. They were little more than halfway across the lake when Miss Catherine heard the loud roar of the engine. Then she saw the ugly black smoke. These are the facts. The Walker boat smashed into Sam's boat. Sam was shot and killed in the water. Catherine Barlow was rescued against her wishes. When they returned to the shore, she saw Mary Lou's body laying on the ground. The donkey had been shot. That all happened 110 years ago. Since then, not one drop of rain has fallen on Green Lake. You make the decision. Whom did God punish? 3 days after Sam's death, Miss Catherine shot the sheriff while he was sitting in his chair drinking a cup of coffee. Then she carefully applied a fresh coat of red lipstick and gave him the kiss he asked for. For the next 20 years, Kissin' Kate Barlow was one of the most feared outlaws in all the West. Chapter 27. Stanley dug his shovel into the ground. His hole was about 3.5 feet deep from the center. He grunted as he pried up some dirt, then flung it off to the side. The sun was almost directly overhead. He glanced at his canteen laying beside his hole. He knew it was half full, but he didn't take a drink just yet. He had to drink sparingly, because he didn't know who would be driving the water truck next time they came by. 3 days had passed since the warden had scratched Mr. Sir. Every time Mr. Sir delivered the water, he poured Stanley's straight onto the ground. Fortunately, Mr. Pendanski delivered the water more often than Mr. Sir. Mr. Pendanski was obviously aware of what Mr. Sir was doing, because he always gave Stanley a little extra. He'd fill Stanley's canteen, then let him take a long drink, then top it off for him. It helped, too, that Zero was digging some of Stanley's hole for him, although, as Stanley had expected, the other boys didn't like to see Stanley sitting while they were working. They'd say things like, "Who died and made you king?" Or, "It must be nice to have your own personal slave." When he tried pointing out that he was the one who took the blame for the sunflower seeds, the other boys said it was his fault because he was the one who spilled them. "I risked my life for those seeds," Magnet had said, "and all I got was one lousy handful." Stanley had also tried to explain that he needed to save his energy so he could teach Zero how to read, but the other boys just mocked him. "Same old story, eh, Armpit?" X-Ray had said. "The white boy sits around while the black boy does all the work. Ain't that right, caveman?" "No, that's not right," Stanley replied. "No, it ain't," X-Ray said. "It ain't right at all." Stanley dug out another shovelful of dirt. He knew X-Ray wouldn't have been talking like that if he was the one teaching Zero to read. Then X-Ray would be talking about how important it was that he got his rest, right? So he could be a better teacher, right? And that was true. He did need to save his strength so he could be a better teacher, although Zero was a quick learner. Sometimes, in fact, Stanley hoped the warden was watching them with her secret cameras and microphones, so she'd know that Zero wasn't stupid as everyone thought. From across the lake, he could see the approaching dust cloud. He took a drink from his canteen, then waited to see who was driving the truck. The swelling on Mr. Sir's face had gone down, but it was still a little puffy. There had been 3 scratch marks down his cheek. 2 of the marks had faded, but the middle scratch must have been the deepest, because it still remained. It was a jagged purple line running from below his eye to below his mouth, like a tattoo of a scar. Stanley waited in line, then handed him his canteen. Mr. Sir held it up to his ear and shook it. He smiled at the swishing sound. Stanley hoped he wouldn't dump it out. To his surprise, Mr. Sir held the canteen under the stream of water and filled it. "Wait here," he said. Still holding Stanley's canteen, Mr. Sir walked past him, then went around the side of the truck to the cab where he couldn't be seen. "What's he doing in there?" asked Zero. "I wish I knew," said Stanley. A short while later, he came out of the truck and handed Stanley his canteen. It was still full. "Thank you, Mr. Sir," said Stanley. Mr. Sir smiled at him. "What are you waiting for?" he asked. "Drink up." He popped some sunflower seeds in his mouth, chewed, and spit out the shells. Stanley was afraid to drink it. He hated to think that he had put some vile substance Mr. Sir might have put in it. He brought the canteen back to his hole. For a long time, he left it beside the hole and continued to dig. Then, when he was so thirsty he could hardly wait anymore, he unscrewed the canteen, turned the canteen over, and poured it out onto the dirt. He was afraid if he'd waited another second, he might have taken a drink. After, Stanley taught Zero the final 6 letters of the alphabet. He taught him to write his name. Capital Z, E, R, O. Zero wrote the letters as Stanley said them. Z, E, R, O. "Zero," he said, looking at his piece of paper. His smile was too big for his face. Stanley watched him write it over and over again. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. In a way, it made him sad. He couldn't help but think that 100 times 0 was still nothing. "You know, that's not my real name," Zero said as they headed to the rec room for dinner. "Well, yeah," Stanley said. "I guess I knew that." He had never really been sure. "Everyone's always called me Zero, even before I came here." "Oh, okay. My real name is Hector." "Hector," Stanley repeated. "Hector Zeroni." Chapter 28. After 20 years, Kate Barlow returned to Green Lake. It was a place where nobody would ever find her. A ghost town on a ghost lake. The peach trees had all died, but there were a couple small oak trees still growing by an old abandoned cabin. The cabin used to be on the eastern shore of the lake. Now the edge of the lake was over 5 miles away, and it was little more than a small pond full of dirty water. She lived in the cabin. Sometimes she could hear Sam's voice echoing across the emptiness. "Onions! Get your sweet, fresh onions!" She knew she was crazy. She knew she'd been crazy for the last 20 years. "Oh, Sam," she would say, speaking into the vast emptiness. "I know it's hot, but I feel so very cold. My hands are cold, my feet are cold, my face is cold, my heart is cold." And sometimes she would hear him say, "I can fix that." She'd feel his warm arms across her shoulders. She'd been living in the cabin about 3 months when she was awakened one morning by someone kicking open the cabin door. She opened her eyes to see a blurring end of a rifle 2 inches from her nose. She could smell Trout Walker's dirty feet. "You've got exactly 10 seconds to tell me where you've hidden your loot," said Trout, "or else I'll blow your head off." Kate yawned. A red-headed woman was there with Trout. Kate could see her rummaging through the cabin, dumping drawers and knocking things from shelves of cabinets. The woman came to her. "Where is it?" she demanded. "Linda? Linda Miller?" said Kate. "Is that you?" Linda Miller had been in the 4th grade when Kate Barlow was a teacher. She had been a cute, freckle-faced girl with beautiful red hair. Now her face was blotchy, and her hair was dirty and scraggly. "It's Linda Walker now," said Trout. "Oh, Linda, I'm so sorry," said Kate. Trout jabbed her in the throat with a rifle. "Where's the loot?" "There's no loot," said Kate. "Don't give me that," shouted Trout. "You've robbed every bank from here to Houston." "You better tell him," said Linda. "We're desperate." "You married him for his money, didn't you?" said Kate. Linda nodded. "But it's all gone. It dried up with the lake, the peach trees, the livestock. I kept thinking, it has to rain soon. The drought can't last forever. But it just keeps getting hotter and hotter." Her eyes fixed on the shovel, which she was leaning up against the fireplace. "She buried it," she declared. "I don't know what you're talking about," said Kate. There was a loud blast as Trout fired his rifle just above her head. The window behind her shattered. "Where's it buried?" he demanded. "Go ahead and kill me, Trout," said Kate. "But I sure hope you like to dig, 'cause you're going to be digging for a long time. It's a big, vast wasteland out there. You and your children and their children can dig for the next 100 years, and you'll never find it." Linda grabbed Kate's hair and jerked her head back. "Oh, we're not gonna kill you," she said. "But by the time we're finished with you, you're gonna wish you were dead." "I've been wishing I was dead for the last 20 years, said Kate. They dragged her out of bed and pushed her outside. She wore blue silk pajamas. Her turquoise-studded black boots remained beside her bed. They loosely tied her legs together so she could walk, but couldn't run. They made her walk barefoot on the hot ground. They wouldn't let her stop walking. "Oh, not until you tell us where the loot is," said Trout. Linda hit Kate on the back of her legs with a shovel. "You're going to have to tell us sooner or later, so you might as well make it sooner." She walked one way, then another, until her feet were black and blistered. Whenever she stopped, Linda whacked her with the shovel. "I'm losing my patience," warned Trout. She felt the shovel jab into her back, and she fell hard into the dirt. "Get up," ordered Linda. Kate struggled to her feet. "We're being easy on you today," said Trout. "It's just going to keep getting worse and worse for you until you take us to it." "Look out!" shouted Linda. A lizard leaped toward them. Kate could see its big red eyes. Linda tried to hit it with a shovel, and Trout shot at it, but they both missed. The lizard landed on Kate's bare ankle. Its sharp black teeth bit into her leg. Its white tongue lapped up the droplets of blood that leaked from the wound. Kate smiled. There's nothing they could do to her anymore. "Start digging," she said. Where is it? Linda screeched. Where'd you bury it? Trout demanded. Kate Barlow died laughing. All right, that's where we're going to end for today. So let's get into our discussion questions. Why, 110 years ago in Green Lake, did no students show up for school the next day? So we learned, remember at the end of our other chapters, that Kate kissed Sam. She really likes him. Well, these people of the town are not nice and not understanding. That Sam's just a regular person too, and that he is really great and is black. So they did not let their kids go to school the next day because they learned that Kate had kissed Sam the Onion Man. What happened after that? There were a lot of things that happened. These horrible townspeople. Well, first, Trout Walker, my least favorite guy of this book, went and led an angry mob into the schoolhouse and tore everything up, and they burned it down. And so Kate went to the sheriff, right? And the sheriff was not good. He was drunk and tried to make Kate kiss him because he was going to hang Sam. Because apparently it was against the law for Sam to kiss her. So Sam and Kate tried to escape. But remember, Trout Walker had that horrible boat that was automatic. And so they stopped him. And they shot Sam. It's not good. Why did Catherine Barlow acquire the reputation kissin' Kate Barlow? Remember what they said at the end of that chapter? She became an outlaw, which means that she was riding around in the Wild West, stealing from people, stopping them, like stagecoaches and stuff, and robbing banks. And the first thing she did was came back and she took out that sheriff. Then she put on her lipstick. She gave him that kiss he was looking for. So she kissed the guys that she killed. Woo. All right. Back in present day, what is Zero's real name? Remember what Zero's real name is? Hector Zeroni. Why is that significant? Remember, Stanley's great-great-grandfather made a deal with Madame Zeroni, and that no good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather broke the deal, and that's why they're all cursed. And now Stanley is making friends with the probably great-great-grandson of Madame Zeroni. Oh boy. So, back in the Old West, who returned to to Green Lake after 20 years of being gone? Kate Barlow. She lived in a cabin that used to be right up against the lake, but there had been no rain there, so the lake looked like a tiny little pond. What happened to Trout Walker during this period? So if we remember the story, Trout Walker and his family were some of the richest people in the town of Green Lake. But the lake dried up, the peach trees all died, and the money went. Why were Linda and Trout terrorizing Kate Barlow. They wanted her loot. So all the things she stole from all the different places. They said she's robbed every bank between there and Houston. And they wanted it. But they didn't get it, did they? What did they figure out? What had Kate done with her loot? She buried it. And as they were walking her out on the lake, what happened? Something jumped up. A yellow spotted lizard bit her on the ankle. Remember, yellow spotted lizards are very poisonous. So she was done for. But she laughed because Trout and Linda Walker didn't get what they wanted. I hope you enjoyed these chapters, chapter 26 through 28. We're going to get into the next part of holes in our next video, so we'll see exactly what happens. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone!